Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I hope you are doing very, very well today. I am doing this particular video at the moment because I would like to address a friend and a viewer of this channel who has been a friend and a viewer of this channel since the early days, since I just started doing this about 2 years ago. And he and I became friends online, and he very kindly reached out to me, and he has very similar interests and the like. His name is Paul, and I remember that my dear friend Paul had, in the very early days, requested that I discuss some films by Michelangelo Antonioni. In particular, he professed a great interest and admiration for the film La Notte. So, as a kind of response to that, and especially since I had just started out on YouTube, and so I didn't have that much in terms of kind of material or kind of a direction. So I was really grateful for comments like those from Paul, and he very kindly gave me a sense of direction and guidance, if you will. And I in fact did discuss, albeit very briefly, the film La Notte at the time it was called something, what was it, 5 by Criterion. It was a little, I don't know, like a series that I was trying to put together at the time. Again, this was the early days. So in one of the 5 by Criterion episodes, or videos that I did, not episodes, but one of those videos that I did, I included, I think, a discussion of La Notte, and this was in direct response to Paul's suggestion and request. And then later, he had made a request for reviews of certain films, and I had said that I would get to them, but for whatever reason I was unable to do so, and time tended to drag along for me, and I sort of didn't do anything with it because other things came up, and so he requested a couple of reviews from me, and so here we are. Now, I have to be very clear here. I don't do reviews on demand, as it were. I'm not necessarily that professionally well equipped to be able to do a review of a film upon someone requesting it. So that's not usually what I do. And I take suggestions, that's for sure. And I listen to the comments and your suggestions through YouTube comments and like all the time, my friends, all the time. But when it comes to reviewing specific films, I don't usually have the ability to respond to every request for a specific review on a particular film here or there. And I've been very fortunate. I've received a lot of requests from a great many people asking me to review this film or that film, and I'm very touched and very honored that you would think of me in that way. I don't have that much of a kind of an acumen when it comes to film reviewing and film criticism. So, and what I do on this YouTube channel, I don't consider to be film reviews. I don't consider them to be film criticisms. I consider them to be reactions and comments, and in my mind I always think of them differently than those of reviews. Maybe one day I might be able to talk about those distinctions I have in my head, but for my own purposes and my own particular approach, as it were, at least how I see it, I don't look at these videos as reviews per se. So that's one of the reasons why I don't do reviews on request or demand, and I don't, while I take recommendations and suggestions and I think about them very carefully, sometimes I will make a decision based on that, but it won't necessarily be in response to every single request that is made of me. And just that's an unfortunate thing on my part due to my lack of time, my lack of proper scheduling skills and the like. So that's all on me. But for Paul, our dear friend Paul, returning to the discussion about him, he was there since the early days, and he had made a couple of requests for reviews, and I had said that I would respond to them. And he was very gracious that he said that, just even if it's just one review, that's enough for me. He was very gracious like that. So he gave me a couple of films to consider. One of the films that he requested is a film from 1981. Now, once again, I have to say that I don't do reviews on request, but in this particular case, I will very gladly make an exception, because I promised Paul that I would do a response to this particular film, or do a kind of, not a response, but do just a discussion. And this isn't even an in-depth discussion of this film, because I don't want to go into specific sort of spoiler territory on this. Maybe perhaps one day, if there's the opportunity, one might look at this and maybe a live stream or something. That might be interesting. But for now, let me just talk very generally about this film, and this is dedicated to you, Paul, my friend. Hopefully you're still around and you're still watching this channel. The film is from 1981, and the filmmaker is Andrzej Zulawski. Zulawski directed this film, which is very peculiar, and I mean this very positively. It is a film that has a depiction of an emotional and physical landscape that is wildly erratic and uneven, and I think that's to the film's advantage. Very eerie and unnerving and quite horrific film, and it is a wholly unique viewing experience in many respects. The film is called Possession. Now, I should make one thing very clear here. I have a DVD of this film, Possession, and this is the DVD that is from Second Sight, which is the UK label. Now, you might notice that I've put my King Ghidorah globe here in front of the DVD cover of Possession. This is a UK DVD, by the way, which accounts for the reason why the certification symbol of 18 appears on the front cover. Now, the reason why I've put the snow globe in front of the cover here is because this is an artistic depiction of a particular representation of the film, and there are there's a woman, and there's something in the background, and I don't want to get into too much detail about that, but I would just say that it's probably depicting one of the key elements of the film, and I'll leave it at that. Now, the artistic depiction, this is an artistic drawing, a rendering, and it's a very beautiful artistic rendering, but there's a depiction of nudity here, and again, it's an artistic depiction. Now, this video is on the YouTube platform, and so I don't want to cause any inadvertent YouTube guideline thing or anything like that. So just for the sake of being safe in terms of YouTube guidelines and videos and the like, I've just put the snow globe in front of the potentially quote-unquote offending area. So that's please forgive me for this little intrusion into the artwork. But if you want to have more of a look as to the artwork of this particular DVD itself, I suggest you can look online and see for yourself what it is. But this is the DVD of the film Possession, again from 1981. The filmmaker is Zulawski. The film stars Sam Neill and Isabelle Adjani. And the film is, in essence, about the depiction of a relationship that is undergoing turmoil, in the sense that they're undergoing a kind of divorce. It's a marriage that's undergoing divorce, or is in talks about divorce, or there's one party in the marriage that seeks a divorce or seeks a separation. And there is much uncertainty that is depicted with respect to this aspect of the dissolution, or the potential dissolution of a marriage, or the dissolution of a human relationship in general. And I would suggest that the film depicts, in at first seemingly emotionally intimate moments, the effects of the dissolution of human relationships, and in this particular case of the story, a marriage. And this marriage also has one son, which is also, I think, a key significant element of this particular film's narrative. Now, the film also, and I think most vividly and most strikingly, also deals with the effects, and perhaps one might call it turmoil, that is caused as a result of this particular relationship breakdown. And the turmoil is represented in, I would say, vivid visual terms, and also in striking cinematically metaphorical choices on the part of the filmmaker, and also on the part of the performers, the actors in this film, in terms of choices that they make regarding reactions to certain situations, reactions with each other, and also uses of voice, uses of one's physical body, and also uses of a kind of outward expression of what one might deem to call, for example, expressions of rage, or expressions of confused anger, confusion, and even a kind of emotional chaos that is brought to the fore in what becomes an almost primordial scream type of fundamentally disturbing way. This film operates, therefore, on the landscape of cinematic metaphor, and it uses cinematic metaphor to layer its narrative towards further layering as the film progresses, to the point where the intensity level is driven upwards, and to the point where there is an equal amount of intensity and confusion. I would say the confusion comes from the fact that if we look at the film from a purely narrative sense, it could be said that a lot of it perhaps seems nonsensical. But I use the word nonsensical in a very specific way, in a very purposeful way, because I think that's part of the point of the film. And I even say nonsensical, but in an intuitive way. The things in the film make sense. They might not seem to make sense at first glance, but in an intuitive way, I think they do make sense. And they make sense in the sense that there is a certain type of cinematic visual logic that is at play here with the film Possession. It might not seem to make, let's say, traditionally narrative sense, but as a kind of abstract notion of the disintegration of a marriage or a relationship made flesh, as it were, or made cinematic flesh in the form of the performances by Adjani and Sam Neill, but also in terms of the camera movements and the depictions of sound and certain scenes that are seemingly coming out of nowhere, but there is a kind of innate logic to them that is logical within the confines of the film. So all of these things, I think, come together and bring about a kind of powerful, forceful, and I think in many ways unique expression of something that I might term, a cinematic primordial scream, that sort of inner rage of expression, of human expression that comes about in times of chaos and in times of turmoil, inner emotional turmoil, especially in the context of the dissolution of a human relationship. When we think about the disintegration of a relationship between one human being and another, it can go many ways, of course. It can be mutually satisfactory to either party, or it can be quite chaotic. And I think when we are dealing with the chaotic breakdown of any kind of relationship, whether it be a marriage or a friendship or a relationship between lovers or something like that, there are potential for a seemingly a sense of disparateness, and also feeling unsure of oneself and unsure of the world, and maybe feeling one is uprooted, one is on shaky ground, shaky terrain. One's environment might seem to have changed because the landscape of faces might have changed. The feeling of what we once thought we knew is gone. That sort of thing, I think, is not uncommon, perhaps, when it comes to difficult breakups. And so I think this film expresses that in visual terms and cinematically metaphorical terms, and does so in a highly intense, charged way, so as to give us a kind of abstract view or feeling, or an abstract expression, if you will, of this kind of sense of confusion and turmoil and feeling uprooted and not quite knowing where one is. And this idea further elaborated upon when we're thinking about the specific imagery of the film, the idea of splits and doubles and doppelgangers, the idea of multifaceted aspects of personalities that might come out, especially in times of stress, especially when we're dealing with the disintegration of a human relationship between human beings. So my point is that the sense of confusion that comes about with a breakup or that sort of thing, I think, is made cinematic flesh in the form of the scenes that we see in this film. And I find this film to be quite startling and very effective. And it is in many ways a horror film, a very, very disturbing horror film. And it goes in directions that are very unexpected and quite perplexing even now. And I think that is absolutely great. There are certain theories that can be posited with respect to the events of this film. They can be potentially confusing to one who hasn't seen the film and will see the film for the first time. There are aspects that are very unsettling, and the film is certainly not for everyone. So I would just urge a little bit of caution for those out there who might not necessarily like to watch intense films. But if you are okay with a kind of intense film that primarily is generated from the intensity and outright brave quirkiness of the choices that are made on the part of the filmmakers and also on the actors. In particular, the acting choices here are profoundly disturbing, almost to the point of being nonsensical. But once again, I use the word nonsensical, and I use words like quirky and illogical, but I use them in a very affectionate way because I have great affection for the performances and the choices that are made here. I have great affection and great admiration for them because they are 100% effective, and they continue to be effective upon multiple views. So I find this film, Possession, to be it's a very difficult watch, but it's one that is rewarding on many levels. I've seen this film a number of times actually, but I admit that it's a film that is actually very disturbing to me, and so I tend to leave a considerable amount of time in between views. If I watch it, then I won't visit it again until some considerable time has passed, because it usually is a pretty intense watch for me. And in particular, I think now in the time and place that I find myself in my life at this particular point in my life, I find myself now being married as well, and I've been in relationships in the past. I mean just relationships in general, friendships, other people and the like. So, and if we think about this film as being an examination of a kind of breakdown of a relationship, then I think it has a very significant impact on me where I find myself in this point in my life. And so it is, I think, a film that I need time to recover from every time I see it, because it does a lot of intense emotional digging, let me put it that way, when it comes to me and my own experiences with the film as I watch it. So this is to say that it's a very highly effective film upon me, and while I acknowledge once again that it's not for everyone, it is certainly a film that deserves attention if one is interested in sort of very unusual and abstract horrific horror film depictions of the emotional turmoil that comes with the disintegration of human relationships. This is the film Possession, and I would suggest also that the comments that I've made are very generalized, and they merely scratch the surface, because this film, I think, holds a lot of key elements that I haven't even touched upon, and I don't want to discuss, because they are elements that I think are just wholly awesome and unique and quite mesmerizing. And I don't mean, I don't necessarily mean like twists or anything like that. I just mean in terms of fundamental cinematic elements. This is the sort of film that I think is so worth watching, and I would recommend anyone, once again, if you're okay with watching intense films, to give this film a look and see what it has to offer, because it has many things to offer beyond anything that I could possibly ever say in the form of these generalized comments. But still, my friends, I have nothing but the greatest admiration and respect for this truly mesmerizing work of art. This is the film Possession. Okay, my friends, and more specifically to my dear friend Paul, once again, I apologize for being so late with this comment. I hope you can forgive me if you are still out there, and I completely understand if you're not a viewer of this channel anymore. I don't take any offense to that. But in the chance that you are out there, my friend, I hope this video message finds you well, and that to everyone else out there, I hope you are happy and healthy and well, and that you continue to watch a lot of great movies. Until we meet again, my friends, take good care of yourselves, and cheers.